And we hear from Wessex Water's Chief Executive about what he's doing to clean up our rivers. We are very excited to be with you. Come and meet my guests. We've got a fantastic lineup this week. Sir Liam Fox is a veteran of the Conservative Party. He's a former party chairman as well, and he's hoping to stay in his seat in North Somerset. Vera Hobhouse is a senior Lib Dem and their candidate for Bath. And Darren Jones is right at the top of the Labour Party and will be in charge of much public spending if they win. He's standing in Bristol North West. You're all very welcome. It's nice to see you. We're now to the shocking state of our waterways. I think everyone would agree about that. Pete Simpson has been to meet the Chief Executive of Wessex Water, who's stepping down after several decades in the job.
It started when Regional Labour Mayor Dan Norris accused water companies of acting like rogue traders. No, back up. It started way before then, in the 80s. Free markets, privatisation, Thatcher and all that. In our region, Wessex Water, owned by Malaysian company YTL, who also own Filton Airfield, managed the water supply. The scrutiny of the amount of filth ending up in our waterways has increased, so too the focus on how these companies are run, which takes us back to Dan Norris and the rogue traders thing. Wessex Water's CEO is a fella called Colin. He's on the verge of leaving the role after 36 years, but wants a chance to have his say before he does. What better place to chat sewage then than at this treatment works in Salford near Bath?
I mean, I've known Dan for years. Dan used to be on one of our advisory committees years ago. And I'm very happy to debate these things, but I think the irritation was the facts were just plain wrong. Yes, there are storm overflows. Yes, storm overflows have an impact, but the Environment Agency says it's about 3% of the impact. Yes, the Bristol Avon has got much better than it used to be, but we still need to do more. And there's a lot of work going on, as you've seen here today. The system that was put in many years ago is not fit for the 21st century. We agree. Storm overflows need to be improved and eliminated. The river water quality is far better than it's ever been.
Really?
So let's get, absolutely. When I came down here in the 1970s, the River Avon was almost dead. If you look at things like phosphate levels, 10% of what, a 90% reduction. Everything has improved, but we need to improve it still further. And part of that is dealing with storm overflows, but there aren't quick fixes.
Does it not concern you that someone of his political status would want to say something like that? And I guess a large proportion of the population would probably agree with his sentiment. And that's about your reputation, right?
I think the water industry is a really difficult time reputationally. And I think it's sad we've come to that, because the people in this industry do a great job day in, day out. I mean, we take away, in Wessex, we take away all of the waste from 2.9 million people. We treat it, we return it successfully to the environment. Most of the time we get it right, absolutely right. Occasionally we don't. Storm overflows are part of the legacy. Storm overflows need to be dealt with, but you will not deal with them overnight.
One more point. I mean, you're stepping down. You've been in charge here at Wessex Water for many years, right, Colin? Hand on heart, do you think the system by which the company operates now, owned by a Malaysian conglomerate, paying all the money out to shareholders, is better than the one we had before?
Well, I can tell you that when it was in the public sector, the investment was even lower. There was never enough investment because sewage, water always came bottom of the list compared to all the other calls on the public purse. And I don't think renationalising would solve a problem. You need investors, and investors need to make a return. The public sector doesn't have the money, so we do need investors if we're going to make all the difference and do all the things that people want us to do in terms of raising standards. What matters is what we're standing here looking at now, the quality of the water in the River Avon and the ability for people to go and enjoy that water and know they can enjoy that water safely.
Colin Skellett, defending the water industry. Darren, is the water industry safe in private hands, or do you think it should be renationalised?
We have no plans to renationalise the water industry, but it's right to point out that there has been a failure of consistent investment. Some water companies have performed better than others, and it's a bit patchy across the country. But we think there needs to be updates to the regulations around how much investment water companies are putting into the infrastructure in order to be able to avoid things like sewage overflows.
How do you decide what you want to nationalise and what you don't? Because you want to nationalise the railways, but not the water. Why is that? Water is more essential, isn't it?
Well, it's done really on a business case process. So on the railways, we know the track is already owned by the country. The train companies that run on them, half of them are already run by the country and the other half are actually managed by the government. So it's almost essentially nationalised already.
Jeremy Corbyn would be furious with you.
Why?
Because he wanted to nationalise public services.
Well, I mean, I don't really mind what Jeremy thinks. I mean, our policy is to renationalise the rail industry, but not the water industry.
Vera, you're longing to say something.
Well, it was the Liberal Democrats who first really drew public and national attention to the filth of the water companies. And the big chronic problem is underinvestment. So we have got a very clear plan. It's a lack of regulation, proper regulation. We would actually disband the current regulator Ofwat, put in a regulator with a real tooth, revoke licenses, and then create public interest companies for running the water
bills? Because if you want investment, then people are going to have to pay for it unless you do something with the company. I don't know.
Well, it is still important that we get private investment, but we need to, of course, make sure that the public get a good deal out of the new arrangements. And absolutely, if we create public interest companies in the way they're run in other countries, like in Denmark, for example, and other European countries, have a look at what has been done and get a good deal for the customers, but also make sure that we get private investment and have a tough regulator. Because
Liam, has it become a sort of metaphor for this period of government, really? You know, the rich directors getting richer and the ordinary people swimming in rivers.
Well, let's look at what matters, which is the investment question. Actually, I agree with Darren. Probably shouldn't be beginning a general election campaign agreeing on things, but there is quite a big difference in performance. And to be fair to Wessex Water, they've been at the higher level of performance across the period. Prior to privatisation, the investment in the water industry was averaging 2.6 billion a year. That's now 6.2 billion on 2021 prices. If water were to be taken back into the public sector, the government would have to find 30 billion over a parliament, therefore, to do that. That money's not there. So that's why no party is talking about taking it back into public ownership. But there is, what we do need to look at is why are some water companies performing better than other ones? What are the factors that are producing that, and how do you get the poorer companies performing to the level of the better ones? And as I say, I think it's a bit unfair. I thought your film criticising Wessex Water that way when they have been one of the better performers.
Well, one of the campaigners said they're one of the best of the worst.
Yes.
In fairness, I mean, there's people are very unhappy, aren't they, with the quality of the water around here?
Well, for some things, with storm overflow, of course, and of course there are other questions as to why we've had such a problem with storm overflow, and when you get wetter years, which we're going to get.
But we shouldn't be swimming in poo, should we?
No, of course we
in 2024.
And of course we shouldn't. Of course we shouldn't, and we need to be working out how we do that. I mean, the alternative, of course, to storm overflow is that our toilets fill up when it gets too wet, unless you've got other nature-based solutions like more wetlands, more reed beds, and so on, which are things that we should be looking at.
So I had a long tour around the pumping station, and I understand the issues around it. And the issues are a system failure, that rainwater and sewage water is mixed up together in our systems, and that's a historic issue. But it still needs the investment to address that and actually separate rainwater from
Darren, people are very upset at some of the remuneration packages being brought home by the directors of private water companies. Is there something that Labour would look at? Would you be looking at top people's pay?
Yeah, so we've already set that out. So the regulator Ofwat would be given further powers to be able to intervene on pay and also dividends based on the performance of those companies. And that's really to say, look, we have this expectation of you around investment in your infrastructure. That's the way you, in the long term, deal with sewage overflows and have the system fit for the future. But if you're a failing business, you shouldn't be taking huge bonuses.
What would be a fair salary, do you think, for a chief executive of a water company?
That would be for Ofwat, the independent regulator, to decide. But we're very clear they should not be getting huge bonuses.
Less than $1 million?
They should not be getting huge bonuses if their businesses are failing.
Liam?
I don't think you judge the success or failure of a water company by how much they're being paid. You judge them by what investment is going in and what the results are. We need to operate on the basis of outcome here. That's got to be the key measure.
Okay. You're very excited about the election?
I am very excited, I said it before. and let's remind people, in the West Country, we'll either end up with a Conservative MP or a Lib Dem MP, and then we continue, if you have got too many Conservative MPs, still with a Conservative government. So think about that. The Liberal Democrats are challenging a lot of Conservative seats.
You've had the last word. Thank you. Well, thanks to my guests, Sir Liam Fox, Vera Hobhouse and Darren Jones.